All right, welcome back to the Buffalo Plus podcast presented by BuffaloPlus.com. As always, I'm joined by Mike Catalana, Dan Fetes. I am Jenna Cottrell. The Bills coming off a win over the Patriots for the first time in quite some time. There's also the fact that the team they are playing this weekend, the 6-1 Seattle Seahawks, we know how good they are. The NFL knows how good they are with Russell Wilson and company. And I also have to mention the fact that we are halfway through the NFL season, where the Bills stand currently, where they look as we go down the line. But, Mike, I want to start with you. What confidence, or if any, can the Bills take away from their meeting against New England this past Sunday?
I think it was more relief than anything. They won. They found a way to win the game. They did drive down, take the lead, and then they got to stop. Now, I'm simplifying it because Bills fans and the team was petrified because Cam was walking down the field. But Zimmer made the play, they got the ball, and they won, and they finally beat New England. And so in hindsight, you look back and say, it's an AFC East win, just like the Jets the week before. Are they happy with how they played? No way, because the offense sputtered, the defense couldn't stop them. In the New England game, they got pushed around by a bad New England offense. So that's a problem. But you could have all those problems and still lose the game. So I think it's a sense of relief and looking, saying, hey, we're 6-2. We know we can play a lot better. We have a good record. I think that gives them some semblance of confidence.
Yeah, I think being 6-2 for the second straight year and beating New England, it kind of was just like a check. It was like a check off the to-do list for the process. Like they needed it. Like you needed to finally beat New England. Didn't matter how pretty, how ugly it was. You beat New England. So that monkey is off Sean McDermott and Josh Allen, and this process is back. And now you can kind of move on. It was like an exhale because it was windy in Western New York, but maybe the exhale was all of Western New York's like sigh of relief that it was finally over to finally, beat that. So I don't know if there's momentum. I'd hate to see, a letdown, which is, they don't necessarily even need to have a letdown to lose against a really good Seattle team, but that was a big game mentally. So to get that, I think there was some momentum. I think, like I said, you heard Jerry Hughes after the game be like, it was great to see our guys finally make the play because he had seen the Patriots rip their hearts out for 2 decades.
I mean, Jordan Poyer was saying post-game in the locker room that he personally was 0-10 against New England. So I, first of all, can't even imagine that. And then second of all, just being able to say, okay, we did finally beat the Patriots. Because like you said, Dan, I think that really is a check mark that the Bills can have. Because other than that, we know this is a team that is doing well. They're undefeated in the division in terms of the AFC East, have high expectations. But Mike, we really haven't seen them beat a really great team. But this weekend, there's that opportunity with Seattle.
Yeah. Oh, they're going to have opportunities in the second half of the year. There's no doubt about it. Let's see what they've done. Like, okay, I don't know what the Rams are, but you can't diminish that was a good win for them at the time. They were dominating that game. They let the Rams back in it. They found a way to win. The Rams are one of those teams that maybe their record is even better than they are, but they won that game. In hindsight, the Dolphins win was a better win than anybody gave them credit for. But at the time, the Dolphins were maybe not as far along as they appear to be now. But the 2 games when they really had a chance to say, all right, how are we going to do against Tennessee? How are we going to do against Kansas City? They failed in both of those games, miserably in the Tennessee game, and just never really, really played the way they can play against Kansas City. So they're getting a chance now. And look, Seattle is, and I know we're going to talk about it, Seattle's good. Wilson's the MVP of the league so far. So you beat Seattle, you put that as a big, big check mark as a plus if you could get it done.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think. Since McDermott took over, obviously they had the upset win at Minnesota where they were 17-point underdogs. That was a big win. But that was what, the fourth game of the season. And Minnesota wasn't necessarily great, ended up being great that year. The big win against Dallas last year, I think, is still the biggest one. But again, Dallas is what Dallas is, and we could let Mike talk for hours about how bad Dallas is and how it's not as impressive. But I think that this is that game where you get a shot to really – I don't know, like, again, it's another statement. Like this is another measuring stick. Like, this is a team that is seen as an NFC contender for a Super Bowl. If you want to be that in the AFC, you need to win these games at home, getting a team coming off the West Coast, right, Mike?
Yeah, and here's the thing about this game too. Look, the Bills are going to be a playoff team, right? I mean, they should be. They're 6-2 in the division, 4-0, 6-2 overall, 4-0 in the division. They've put themselves in a great spot to win the AFC. It's not locked up, but they put themselves in a good spot. Well, when you get in the playoffs, these are the kind of teams you're going to face. Now, obviously not Seattle, because Seattle's in the NFC, but we saw it against Tennessee. We saw it against Kansas City. We're going to see them play Pittsburgh. Like, this is what you've got to show. What would we do in that type of game? And I think they know that too. I think they know it. You try to justify in your own mind, the Tennessee game was the whole COVID thing, and Kansas City's Kansas City, and that game went back and forth. Oh, whatever. They didn't play anywhere near enough. We know, we've seen this team play much better. It's time they show it on the field. Because you were saying McDermott's record against winning teams is not very good. It isn't. So it's time they start showing they belong at least to compete against these top teams, not just lose to them all the time.
Well, and I know we've seen the Bills win these last two games, but we also have seen Josh Allen just not be the Josh Allen that we saw in the beginning of the season. Now, Dan, like the run game did get going last week, which I think was important because we really haven't seen that development so far this season. But I guess my concern is, with Josh not playing the way we saw before, why is that the case? Why has he, I don't want to say regressed, but what has been the biggest difference? Is it just the way the teams are playing him because they've had those 4 weeks of tape from the first month of the season?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And it's just Josh being more careful not to have that backbreaking turnover. I think that's part of it. But this is a team that still that is still built to put up 30 points. Obviously, you didn't get Stephon Diggs to run the ball 30 times a game. And they will tell you all the time, we'll do whatever it takes to win and all of those things. Yeah, but I remember asking Brian Dable about it earlier last week are you proud of the way that Josh has handled this new cover 2 shell, keep everything in front, don't get beat over the top defenses that he's starting to face? And he's like, well, I expect him to do this. I expect him to be that guy. But he goes, every quarterback wants to throw the ball 40, 45 times. And I think that this is still there. I still just think they're trying to show that they can win more than one way. I think last year this was, like I said, this offense, hate to say regressed because but they're back to 19 points a game over the last 4 weeks, which is where they were last year for the entire season compared to over the 30 points a game where they were for the first 4 weeks. So it's a weird dynamic.
Right. You know what happened? Josh is a lot nicer to your mother. He's not drinking too much at the table. His manners are better. But he's boring now. He's the boring guy. Jenna, he's changed. We don't want this Josh. We want the fun Josh. Let Josh cook this week. Open it up. Let him play. I think you need to do it. And let's face it, Seattle's defense stinks too. I know looks like maybe they get Adams back and they brought in a pass rusher in Dunlop, but their defense stinks and everybody has moved the ball against them. So let's get back to Josh being Josh, right? Let's get a little more of that. Let's open it up.
But I also think
there have been some reasons for the regression back. Obviously, they tried to play this, I think against Kansas City, I go back to that game. The defense couldn't get off the field. They had 7 plays in the second half. So that's part of that reason. Tennessee, they just got their doors blown off. But then they marched the ball well against the Jets. They just couldn't get in the end zone with dumb penalties. And last week, there were 40-mile-an-hour winds. Sarcasm here. The Bills only practiced 2 pass plays on Friday's practice before that New England game. That's what Brian Dable said. The rest were runs. They went in there going, we're going to run the ball because we knew the weather. Guess what? This week, 70 and sunny against a pathetic Seattle defense. Let Josh cook and see where you're back at, because there will be opportunities. Even if they try and keep the ball in front of them, Seattle is so bad you can get the ball behind them. That's just the bottom line.
You can.
But I will say, though, my thing is I feel like Josh has, even when receivers have been open, he has struggled to hit them more. I don't know. And I also feel like, yes, there was a lot of wind last week, but, Gabriel Davis he had the ball right through his hands. Like, I feel like other than Stephon Diggs, like John Brown really didn't have an impact. He had the one like nice chunk play. But other than that, I feel like Allen, I feel like has struggled to hit his receivers.
But Jenna, that's also a change. He's now facing much more of zone defenses. And when you're still trying to figure things out, especially against zone defenses, you want to see the throw before you make it. So there were a couple of times where Josh, it just doesn't pull the trigger. Like we saw a lot of crossing routes and things like that early in the season. And with zones, there's different times where you can hit the receivers and there's different, pockets of where you're trying to hit them. So he's trying to do the right thing, but it's just boring. But it's smarter.
It is. It's smarter against those teams because, Patriots offense is bad. The Jets is historically awful. So you can win the game just by sort of playing it smart. Mm-hmm. But against the good teams, you're not going to be able to do that. And Seattle's going to move the ball. But, as Collinsworth was doing one of the Seattle games, and he's like watching Seattle play, and he's like, this pass rush is atrocious. He's like, this team's problem the rest of this year, and again, they think Carlos Dunlap can help that, but there's going to be, they aren't getting close to a quarterback. Quarterbacks are going to pick them apart. If there's no pass rush on Josh and they're not great in the second, you're going to have to light them up. And I don't care what type of defense. They don't play it very well. And they know that. Look at their scores. Every game is 30-something to 30-something, against Minnesota and Miami and all these teams. So I think this is the game where you say, we got the whole offense ready to go. John Brown practiced fully on Thursday. That's a plus. And, you're going to need it because you're going to need to score. So I think they get back to the way they played the beginning of the year.
I guess I kind of lost a little bit of confidence in that. If
they have too.
Well, you should have.
If this is a safe space, I just feel like while I think it is important for them to have been able to win on their ground game, I also think that just the dumb penalties, the self-inflicted wounds that we've seen, just being a bit off with receivers, like all of those things have definitely made me feel like, okay, we saw this Bills offense be very efficient early on, but now is this like the regression to the mean?
I think there's a little bit of that.
I mean, we were talking about like the Jets win and Patriots, and like the Patriots are not.
It's still division games. It's division games, and as much as the Jets looking for their first win, the Patriots coming off a losing streak. Belichick at least got their attention because they were awful the week before and got embarrassed. That team played hard, and Cam was very efficient. I personally thought the Patriots game plan might as well have been the Kansas City game plan. They ran the ball down the Bills' throat, and Cam, much like Patrick Mahomes, picked the Bills apart when he needed and when he needed and fumbled in a big spot. The difference was Zimmer got him a fraction too late in the game against Kansas City, and he got Cam at the right time, right? So, I mean, if you look at the way they played, now the difference also is, I believe, at any moment with Kansas City needed the passing game, they would have lit them up because that's the way they've been.
Yeah.
Maybe New England wasn't going to do that, but that was sort of the plan. Russ is going to move the ball on him. I mean, he just is. Metcalf's going to make plays. They're going to move the ball on the field. But they've done that every week, and other teams have just moved it right back on them. That's why I think, come on, fellas, it's an NFC game. Go after them in this game.
This game is going to be weird. I don't know how, but it will be weird.
Every Seattle game I feel like is weird.
Exactly, Jenna. So something is going to happen, whether Seattle's going to blow a big lead or the Bills are going to blow a big lead. This game will be close. It'll be a one-score game, I think, down late. And this won't be a low-scoring game like we have seen the last few weeks. And again, you talk about, letting Josh cook. We kind of joking around, obviously, going off the Russ thing, but McDermott and Dable are going to have to take some chances. Kicking field goals from the 5-yard line on 4th and 1 just isn't going to get it done. It's not going to beat Seattle. And like I said, Sean McDermott and them are not playing to keep games close. Micah Hyde, those guys are not.
Yeah, they're going to need. Yeah, they are going to need to score points. They're going to need to be aggressive because, and also though, there are times when I look at that and I say, okay, if you go for it there, at least put Wilson in a tougher spot. Don't allow them you kick the field goal, you give it to him, 30-yard line, and there he goes again. If you get him pinned back, maybe you can make a play. It was interesting to see the way the Cardinals played him in that game, and he was picking them apart. And then as it got to late in the fourth quarter in overtime, they came with a couple blitzes. I was stunned watching it. They fooled him.
Yeah.
They fooled him. And we have seen the Bills come up with the blitzes, especially using Poyer. Mm-hmm. And there have been times when, for whatever the reason, he's so good, he sees the field like Brady, but they've caught him on those blitzes. And I think you're going to see them be a little more aggressive defensively too, because otherwise the dude's just going to sit back there, run around in the pocket, and then throw it to 7'3", 400-pound Megatron wide receiver and burn you that way with DK Metcalf.
Hey, this is a game. Go, Jenna.
No, I was just going to say, I feel like we had to talk about the folklore that is DK Metcalf.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I feel like this is the game that Trey White needs to step up. And I'm not saying that, he hasn't earned his contracts or anything like that. I was the biggest flag waver for Trey White's contract extension.
Really? I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. But guess what? He needs to step up and play some shutdown corner this week, whether it's against Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf, because Russ is not afraid to go after anybody. Because when he gets one-on-one, whether it's DK gets one-on-one or Tyler Lockett, and he throws that ball that looks like it's going to hit a plane and then drops in the bucket to his receiver, like Trey White's going to have to come up big, as well as the safeties, because they're going to let Russ cook. The running backs are still banged up. The offensive line isn't great like you talked about in Seattle. They can get pressure on them, but I'm looking at Jerry Hughes. I'm looking at Trey White that need to step up to not stop them all the time, but at least maybe get a turnover, maybe get a couple third down stops to get off the field.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's quickly do our picks. Mike, I'll start with you.
You look at Seattle, it's funny. When you look at those scores, it's, 30-30, 30-30. It's like every game. The games are fun to watch. They're exciting back and forth, and he makes plays. I think we're going to have the same kind of game. Seattle, though, is coming off 2 straight NFC West games. They had a loss against Arizona. Then they got a win last week against San Francisco, a banged-up San Francisco team. They follow this with 2 more division games again, with the Rams and the Cardinals again. This Buffalo game is squeezed in the middle. It's the travel, yes, but it's also a Sunday 1 o'clock game in Buffalo.
Yeah.
When they play in the prime time or 4 o'clock our time all the time. So for them, it's a different vibe. I think he'll still be great. I think if you're going to beat him, you got to outscore him, and you got to make sure you score at the end. Don't give it back to him. So I'm going out on a limb here because Seattle is the more predictable team. You know what you're getting out of him every week. But I just have a feeling about the Bills this week. I'm going to take them to win 34-31 over Seattle.
Ooh. All right, Dan, what are your thoughts?
I like Mike's logic. I think that it makes sense in nearly everything. But the Bills are 6-2. And exactly. The Bills are 6-2 for the second straight year. They're not going to sneak up on anybody. And their defense isn't good enough at this moment to get a stop or 2, I think, when they need it. I think Russ has another big day. I think that whether it's whoever is running the ball for Seattle, I don't know who it'll be, whether it's Carson's banged up or Hyde's banged up, one of those guys, or their third running back that always seems to be playing too. They offer a lot of problems. I think the Bills' offense gets back on track a little bit because of how bad Seattle's defense is, but I think the Bills jump out early. I think they kind of come out and maybe get Seattle quickly. We saw Seattle struggle at times with Miami on these 1 o'clock West Coast games, but Seattle in the end, just too much offense in this one, 33-27 Seahawks.
Okay. I agree with you, Dan. I just think that my prediction is 31-28 Seahawks, just because I think these teams are pretty comparable in terms of the defense and the ability for the offense to score, but I just have more trust at this point in the season in Russell Wilson. Look, he is having the MVP caliber year. We know how good DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, the offensive weapons are. And I think that we've seen them be able to play well consistently. I think this is a Bills team that hasn't been able to score in these last couple of weeks in particular. And because of that, I just find that my confidence is more in the Seattle team. Mike, you make a great point about where the scheduling lines up, the fact that they're coming east all of that, but I haven't seen enough out of the Bills in these last couple of weeks. If they played them earlier in the season, I would feel a lot more confident, and I would probably pick Buffalo for the upset. But at the same point, of what we've seen, I just don't have that same level.
In fairness, I always make a great point. So you're trying to, you're trying to, say, is it going to be correct?
You sometimes.
Sometimes.
Now, I will say, before Bills fans get mad at us, Mike has seen a lot of Bills games. So we don't know. We'll find out soon if he's right, but don't jump down Dan and I's throat.
No. And look, this game could be the exact game I'm talking about, and the Bills score with 48 seconds left, and then we watch Russ walk down the field and beat them. So believe me, I don't have a ton of confidence. There's just something telling me that the Bills have disappointed themselves over the last few weeks, still found a way to win, and that they come out with what we did not see. We got cheated out of that Kansas City game.
We really did.
That was a boring game. And I know it was windy, whatever it is, a little rain. It was not that bad, not what Dan saw last week. But I think this week it's more like a September early game in Buffalo, and these teams are running up and down the field. And that's what I hope. I hope for the fans we get that game Sunday.
If the Bills, this is the game, I really don't care too much about the defense. I'd like to see them make a play or two like Justin Zimmer did. I'd like to see Trey White or somebody come up with an interception to kind of change momentum. But I understand and expect for Russ to march up and down the field because he's done it against everybody. I'm not too focused on the defense. If the offense can't get right against Seattle, I got big questions. Even at 7-2, if they were able to pull off this win and the defense plays great or whatever, if the offense can't score 26, 27 points, I've got concerns that this offense has relapsed to the point of 2019, and they have lost. They've time traveled back to the 19th century, Mike, where we've usually seen them.
Yeah, it is. And we were joking about where they are. Keep in mind with Seattle, they get the lead, they're down, they're up. It doesn't matter. It all runs through Russ, right? He's going to have the ball in his hands.
But that's the reason.
He plays the position so well that that's why, even with a guy like Mahomes in the league, and Brady still being Brady, and Aaron Rodgers and all these guys, I think the guy's the best quarterback in the NFL. I think he sees the field, makes all the throws, great with the deep ball. But he has, he's thrown 6 picks this year. He does on occasion try to force it. So we'll see if they can make a few.
But that's the perfect point, Mike. The key matchup is not the Bills trying to slow down Russ. That's just not going to happen. The key matchup is the Bills' offense against the worst defense in the NFL. That's what the Bills have to win. They're not going to beat Russ. They're not going to keep Russ from throwing 2.5+ touchdowns. The goal is to score and throw punches with them.
But if you watch that Arizona game, Arizona did enough on defense, came up with a few turnovers, and still met them. You got to do something. You can't just let them walk up and down the field every time, or then you're going to have no chance. So they need to make some plays, as they like to say, like Stephon Gilmore would say, make plays. They need to do that on defense, and then Josh has to get back. So let's let Josh go out, have a little fun this week, be that way.
Okay.
And he can still be a good guy, but let's make sure old Josh Allen is ready to go on Sunday.
All right.
Let him cook.
I'm going to say, I actually saw a great comment on Buffalo Plus. It said, let Josh Russ. Shout out to whoever said that, because that was hilarious, and I've laughed about it every day this week. All right, make sure to tune in to Buffalo Plus on YouTube, as well as on the buffaloplus.com. We'll have more coverage as the Bills get ready for Seattle on Sunday. For Mike Catalana and Dan Fetes, I'm Jenna Cottrell. Thank you so much for listening.